The massive arena stretched out like a metal mountain under the purple sky of Nexus Prime. Thousands of alien beings filled the seats, their strange voices creating a buzz that echoed off the curved walls. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking crystals that caught the light from 3 different suns. Hyunwoo stood in the center of the arena floor. The ground beneath his feet was made of some kind of black metal that felt warm to the touch. He looked small compared to the huge space around him, but he did not seem worried. His hands were steady at his sides and his breathing was calm. Above him in the viewing area, Sujin pressed her face against the clear barrier. Her knuckles were white as she gripped the rail. "This is madness," she whispered to Commander Taemin, who stood beside her. "They are going to kill him." Taemin's jaw was tight. He had seen many battles in his years with the Earth Defense Corps, but nothing like this. "The rules are clear," he said quietly. "Each side calls their strongest creature. Winner decides everything." "But we never agreed to this," Sujin said. Her voice cracked a little. "We were just trying to set up a trade route through their space." How did it come to this? The answer was simple and stupid, like many things that led to war. A human mining ship had taken samples from an asteroid field. The Velthari claimed it was their holy hunting ground. Words were exchanged. Threats were made. And now somehow the fate of human expansion into this sector depended on what happened in this arena. Across from Hyunwoo, the Velthari champion waited. Krixtal was 7 feet tall and covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. His yellow eyes never blinked as he stared at the human. When he smiled, rows of sharp teeth showed. His long tail swept back and forth across the arena floor, leaving scratch marks in the metal. "Look at him," Krixtal called out, his voice carrying easily across the arena. The translator devices made his words clear to everyone. "The soft skin thinks he can face the might of the Velthari." He threw back his head and made a sound like a roaring laugh. "Your kind should have stayed in your little corner of space, human." The crowd of aliens seemed to agree. The insect-like Thurvax clicked their mandibles together in what might have been laughter. The crystal beings called Nexari, who served as judges, glowed a bit brighter. Even the furry Zephyrians, who were usually friendly to humans, looked worried. Ambassador Haewon sat in the diplomatic section, her face showing nothing. She had tried to find another way to settle this dispute for weeks. The Velthari were proud and would not bend. They said humans needed to learn respect. This trial by combat was the only option they would accept. "Your champion seems calm," said the Velthari ambassador beside her. His name was something with too many clicking sounds for humans to say easily. "That is good. Fear makes the meat taste bad." Haewon did not answer. She knew something the aliens did not know. Hyunwoo was not just a diplomat. Before he joined the Foreign Service, he had been something else entirely. Something that made him the perfect choice for this moment. Down in the arena, the head judge, a tall Nexari whose crystal body pulsed with blue light, raised one arm. "The trial will begin," the judge announced. "Each champion will call forth their species' greatest predator. The winner will speak for both peoples in this matter." "Greatest predator," Krixtal repeated, his voice full of pride. "Human, you do not know what those words mean. My people have bred the perfect killer for 1,000 generations. We have made evolution itself bend to our will." Hyunwoo finally spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. "I know what those words mean. Do you?" Krixtal's tail lashed harder against the ground. "Have you seen terror given form? Have you looked into the eyes of death itself?" "Yes," Hyunwoo said simply. "I have." Something in his tone made the crowd quiet a little. Sujin leaned forward. She had worked with Hyunwoo for 2 years, but there were things about his past that he never talked about. Things that were marked as classified in his file. The Velthari champion began to pace in a circle around his half of the arena. "Then you know fear. Good. It will make this end quickly." He stopped and faced the judges. "I am ready to begin the summoning." The head judge's crystal body pulsed once. "You may proceed." Krixtal moved to the center of his area and knelt down. He placed both hands flat on the metal floor and began to speak in the old Velthari language. The words were harsh and full of hard sounds that seemed to scrape the air. As he spoke, the floor beneath him began to glow with red light. The glow spread outward in complex patterns that looked like writing. The air above the patterns started to shimmer like heat waves. Something was coming through from somewhere else. The crowd leaned forward in excitement. Sujin grabbed Taemin's arm. "What is Hyunwoo going to do? We did not bring anything. We do not have any war beasts." Taemin looked down at the human champion who still stood calmly in his spot. I do not know, he admitted. But Hae-won seemed confident when she chose him. The red glow from Krixtal's summoning circle was getting brighter. The shimmer in the air was taking shape. Something big was coming through. The Velthari in the crowd began to make their roaring laugh sound. They knew what was coming. Behold, Krixtal shouted, rising to his feet. The apex devourer of the Velthari. The air split open like a wound and something stepped through. It was a nightmare made real, 15 feet tall and covered in black scales that looked like they could stop laser fire, 6 arms ending in claws as long as swords, a head full of teeth that dripped with acid, eyes that glowed red and seemed to look right into a person's soul. The creature let out a roar that was not just sound. It was something that reached into the mind and grabbed the parts that knew about fear and death. Several aliens in the crowd fainted. Others ran for the exits. Even the brave Nexari judges flickered in their light. The apex devourer looked around the arena like it owned everything it could see. Its 6 arms flexed, showing muscles like steel cables. When it breathed, smoke came out of its nose. The metal floor cracked under its weight. Krixtal stood beside his monster with pride written all over his scaled face. This human is what a real predator looks like. This is what happens when a species takes control of evolution itself. He gestured to his beast, acid that can melt through ship hulls, claws that can cut through armor, a mind that can break lesser creatures with fear alone, 10,000 years of breeding and enhancement. The crowd was going wild. The Thurvax were placing bets on how long the human would last. Most of them said less than a minute. The Zephyrians were covering their children's eyes. Even some of the other human diplomats in the viewing area looked sick. But Hyunwoo just stood there looking at the monster like it was mildly interesting. He tilted his head to one side, studying the creature's movements. His hands were still relaxed at his sides. It is impressive, he said, and his voice carried clearly across the arena despite the noise from the crowd. Krixtal blinked in surprise. He had expected screaming or begging or at least some sign of fear. You do not understand, he said. This creature has killed entire armies. It has broken the will of empires. I understand perfectly, Hyunwoo replied. He looked up at the viewing area where Sujin and Taemin watched. He gave them a small smile and a tiny wave. Then he turned back to face the apex devourer, and his smile got a little bigger. The head judge raised an arm again. Human champion, you must now call forth your creature. You have 5 minutes to complete the summoning or you forfeit. Hyunwoo nodded. I will not need 5 minutes, and then he started to laugh. The laughter started quiet. Just a small chuckle that came from deep in Hyunwoo's chest, but it grew louder and clearer until it filled the whole arena. It was not the laugh of someone who was scared or broken. It was the laugh of someone who found something truly funny. The enormous crowd fell silent. Thousands of aliens stopped their chattering and betting to stare at the small human who was laughing at death itself. Even the apex devourer seemed confused by this strange response. Krixtal's yellow eyes narrowed. You have lost your mind, Softskin. Fear has broken you already. But Hyunwoo shook his head, still chuckling. No, I am sorry. It is just... He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. 10,000 years of breeding, you said? That is very impressive. Really it is. Mock me if you wish, Krixtal snarled. It will not save you. I am not mocking you, Hyunwoo said, and he sounded sincere. Your beast is truly amazing. The acid breath, the psychic fear, the enhanced muscles. Your people did incredible work. The Velthari champion puffed up with pride despite himself. Of course we did. We are the masters of biological warfare. But you see, Hyunwoo continued, humans took a different approach. He looked up at the 3 suns shining through the arena's open top. We did not have 10,000 years to wait. Sujin pressed against the viewing barrier so hard her nose was flat against the clear metal. What is he talking about? She whispered to Taemin. The commander was frowning in concentration. Something about Hyunwoo's confidence was familiar. He had seen that look before, on the faces of soldiers who knew something their enemies did not. Human champion, called the head judge. You must begin your summoning. Time grows short. Hyunwoo nodded politely to the crystal being. Of course. Thank you for your patience. He turned back to Krixtal. Would you like to know what humans call our greatest predator? I do not care what name you give to your pet. Krixtal sneered. We call her Luna, Hyunwoo said simply. That was when he put 2 fingers to his lips and whistled. The sound was sharp and clear, cutting through the arena's air like a blade. It was not some alien technology or mystical summoning call. It was just a whistle, the kind a person might use to call a dog in a park back on Earth. Nothing happened for a moment. The crowd started to mutter and point. Some of the aliens were clearly disappointed that the human's summoning was so simple and seemed to have failed. Krikstal threw back his head and roared with laughter. "That is it? That is your great magic? A whistle?" He slapped his knee with one clawed hand. The stories about human stupidity were not lies after all. But Hyunwoo was not paying attention to the mocking. He was listening to something else. His head was tilted slightly like he was waiting for a sound that only he could hear. Then the floor started to shake. It began as just a small vibration, like a heavy vehicle passing by far away. But it grew stronger quickly. The metal beneath everyone's feet started to rattle and hum. In the viewing areas, aliens grabbed the rails to keep their balance. The apex devourer stopped moving and lowered its massive head to the ground. Its 6 arms spread wide as it tried to keep steady. For the first time since it had appeared, the creature looked uncertain. "What is this?" Krikstal demanded, his tail lashing as he fought to stay upright. The shaking was getting worse. Deep in the structure of the arena, something was moving. Something very big. Emergency lights started flashing around the edges of the viewing areas. Automated voices began speaking in a dozen different languages, all saying the same thing. Structural integrity alert. Unknown seismic activity detected. Ambassador Haewon stood up in the diplomatic section, a small smile crossing her face for the first time in weeks. She had been waiting for this moment ever since she chose Hyunwoo as Earth's champion. "By the void," whispered one of the Thurvaks in the crowd. "What did the human do?" The answer came as a sound that made the apex devourer's roar seem like a whisper. It started as a low rumble that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then it grew into something that was part earthquake and part avalanche. The arena's metal walls vibrated like the strings of a massive instrument. But underneath all that noise was something else. Something that made every creature in the arena, no matter what planet they came from, feel a cold touch of ancient fear. It was the sound of something very old and very hungry waking up. The main gate at the far end of the arena was massive, designed to let in the biggest creatures the galaxy had to offer. It was made of reinforced metal that could stop starship weapons. But now it was bending outward like soft plastic. Krikstal stared at the gate, his mouth hanging open. "Impossible. Nothing can break those barriers." "You are right," Hyunwoo said calmly. "Nothing can break them. That is why we asked them to open the gate for us." As if his words were a signal, the massive gate split down the middle and began to slide apart. The sound of metal grinding against metal mixed with the rumbling roar that was still growing louder. Through the opening came water. Not just a little water, but a rushing flood that poured into the arena like a waterfall. But this was not ordinary water. It glowed with a soft blue light and seemed to flow upward as much as down, defying gravity in ways that made several aliens in the crowd sick just watching it. "Gravitic suspension fluid," Taemin breathed, finally understanding. They brought a habitat tank. The water filled the arena floor to a depth of 20 feet in seconds, but it did not feel wet to touch. Hyunwoo stood in it like it was just thick air. The apex devourer tried to move through it, but found that its massive bulk moved slowly and clumsily in the strange liquid. And then, through the gate, came Luna. She was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. 80 feet of streamlined death moving through the glowing water like it was her natural home. Her skin was not scales, but something smoother and harder like living metal. Her fins cut through the fluid without making a sound. But it was her eyes that made the entire arena fall silent. They were ancient eyes, older than civilization, older than most of the species watching. They were the eyes of something that had ruled oceans when planets were young. The megalodon had been extinct on Earth for millions of years. But humans had brought her back, and they had made her better. Small lights pulsed along Luna's sides where cybernetic implants connected to her nervous system. Her massive jaws had been enhanced with energy fields that could bite through starship hulls. Her brain had been augmented to accept neural links that let her work with humans as a partner. Not just a weapon, she was science and nature working together. Evolution and engineering combined into something that was more than the sum of its parts. Luna swam a slow circle around the arena. her massive form moving with grace that made even the hostile aliens gasp in awe. She was not showing off. She was hunting, studying her environment and her prey with the patience of something that had survived for millions of years by being perfect at what it did. The apex devourer, for all its genetic enhancements and bred-in aggression, took a step backward. Some instincts were older than intelligence, and they were screaming warnings that every predator understood. Hyun-woo reached up as Luna's massive head came near him. His hand, so small compared to her enormous bulk, touched the side of her snout just behind her eye. The touch was gentle, almost tender. "Hello, girl," he said quietly. "Did you have a good sleep?" Luna's response was a sound that was part purr and part rumble. It vibrated through the water and the metal of the arena itself. In that sound was contentment, recognition, and something that might have been affection. Krixtal stared at this impossible scene. What is that thing?" Hyun-woo looked up at him with those same calm eyes. "This is Luna. She is a great white shark from Earth. Well, she was. Now she is something more." "Sharks?" The Velthari champion's voice cracked a little. "But sharks are just fish, primitive creatures." "Yes," Hyun-woo agreed. "Primitive. 400 million years of evolution made them perfect hunters. We just helped them reach their full potential." The head judge's crystal body was flickering rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "This is irregular. We were told humans had no war beasts." "We do not," Hyun-woo replied. "We have partners." At his words, Luna's eyes focused on the apex devourer across the arena. Her massive form went very still in the water. She was no longer exploring or playing. Now she was working. The arena was so quiet that the sound of water gently moving around Luna's fins seemed loud. Every alien eye was fixed on the massive shark as she floated motionless in the center of the fighting space. Her ancient gaze never left the apex devourer, who had stopped its threatening displays and now stood very still. Ambassador Hae-won stood in the diplomatic viewing area, watching the faces of the other species' representatives. She could see the exact moment when each of them realized what they were looking at. The Thurvak stopped clicking their mandibles. The Zephyrian's fur was standing up all over their bodies. Even the crystal Nexari were pulsing with colors she had never seen before. "Impossible," the Velthari ambassador muttered beside her. His confident tone from earlier was completely gone. "Sharks are just simple predators. They have no intelligence, no strategy." "You are partly right," Hae-woo replied calmly. "Sharks do not need strategy. They are strategy. 400 million years of it, written in flesh and instinct." Down in the arena, Krixtal was trying to regain his composure. The Velthari champion straightened his shoulders and gestured toward his creature. "Size means nothing. My apex devourer has abilities your primitive beast cannot match." To prove his point, he gave a mental command to his creature. The six-armed monster opened its mouth and breathed out a stream of acid that could melt through starship armor. The green liquid hissed and bubbled as it hit the water around Luna, but the shark did not even flinch. The acid dispersed harmlessly in the gravitic fluid that surrounded her. Worse for the apex devourer, Luna's enhanced senses could now track exactly where her enemy was by the chemical signature of its breath. "Acid," Hyun-woo said, sounding almost bored. "That is useful on dry land, I suppose." Krixtal's tail was lashing faster now. He tried the creature's second ability. The apex devourer's glowing red eyes focused on Luna and sent out waves of psychic fear, the same mental attack that had broken the minds of countless warriors across the galaxy. The fear waves hit Luna and did nothing at all. She continued floating in place, watching the six-armed creature with the same calm attention she had shown before. "Psychic attacks," Hyun-woo observed. "Those work well on creatures with complex emotions and imaginations. But Luna has been a perfect killer since before most planets had life on them. She does not know fear because she has never needed to." In the viewing areas, aliens were starting to whisper among themselves. The confident betting on how quickly the human would die had stopped. Now there was uncertainty in the air and something that might have been worry. Sujin was staring at Hyun-woo like she had never seen him before. "Who is he?" she asked Taemin quietly. "I mean, who is he really?" The commander was reading something on a small device in his hand. His face was very serious. Before he joined the diplomatic corps, Hyun-woo worked for the Deep Ocean Research Division. Top secret stuff. According to this file, he spent 8 years working with... He paused, checking the information again. "With large marine predator recovery and enhancement programs." "Recovery?" Sujin repeated. They brought back extinct species, Taemin explained, and then they made them better. Down in the arena, the apex devourer was getting restless. Its bred-in aggression was warring with instincts that were much older and deeper. The creature had been designed to dominate and intimidate, but nothing in its genetic programming had prepared it for this situation. Luna, on the other hand, was completely relaxed. She hung in the water like she had all the time in the world. Her enhanced eyes tracked every movement the six-armed creature made. Her cybernetic implants were processing information and feeding it directly to her brain. Heart rate, muscle tension, chemical signatures, even the electrical activity of her opponent's nervous system. She knew exactly how scared the other creature was, even if it did not know it itself. Your beast does nothing, Krixtal said, but his voice was not as steady as before. Is it broken? Afraid? Hyunwoo shook his head. She is thinking. Thinking? The Velthari champion laughed, but it sounded forced. Sharks do not think. They are mindless eating machines. That is a common mistake, Hyunwoo replied. Sharks are actually very intelligent. They just think differently than land creatures do. Luna thinks in currents and vibrations, in chemical trails and electrical fields. She thinks in 3 dimensions while most creatures can only manage 2. As if to prove his point, Luna began to move, but she did not charge forward like the apex devourer expected. Instead, she sank deeper into the water and began to circle the arena in a wide spiral. The 6-armed creature turned to follow her movement, but Luna was already behind it again. She moved through the gravitic fluid like it was her natural element, which in many ways it was. The enhanced water responded to her cybernetic implants, letting her swim in directions that should have been impossible. She is mapping the space, Hyunwoo explained quietly, though his words carried clearly in the hushed arena. Learning the currents, the obstacles, the escape routes. Sharks do not just attack. They plan. The apex devourer was growing more agitated as it tried to track Luna's movements. Its 6 arms waved frantically as it spun in place, but the shark was always just out of sight, just beyond reach. Fight! Crystal shouted at his creature. Attack the Softskin's pet! But the apex devourer was no longer responding to commands with its usual obedience. The psychic connection between the Velthari and his beast was still strong, but fear was a more powerful force than training. In the diplomatic section, the Thurvax representative was speaking rapidly into a communication device. Send word to the fleet, he was saying. We may need to revise our assessment of human capabilities. Ambassador Haewon smiled to herself. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen. For too long, the other species had seen humans as weak newcomers to the galactic community. They thought Earth's creatures were primitive, its people harmless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Luna completed her 3rd circle of the arena and finally came to a stop. She positioned herself directly across from the apex devourer, her massive bulk perfectly still in the glowing water, for a moment. Predator stared at Predator across the flooded arena floor. Then Luna did something that made every alien in the crowd take a step back from the viewing barriers. She smiled. It was not a human smile, of course. Sharks could not move their faces the way mammals could, but there was something in the way her lips pulled back slightly, something in the angle of her fins that conveyed unmistakable satisfaction. She had finished her planning. Now she was ready to work. The apex devourer, bred for aggression and dominance, finally could not stand the waiting any longer. With a roar that shook the arena walls, it charged forward through the water, all 6 arms spread wide to grab and tear. Luna waited until the creature was almost close enough to touch her. Then she moved, but she did not move forward or backward or to either side. Instead, she moved down and up at the same time, her enhanced body twisting through the 3-dimensional space of the water in a way that made several aliens sick to watch. The apex devourer's charge carried it right through the space where Luna had been a split second before. The creature's claws closed on empty water. Luna was now directly above her opponent, looking down at its exposed back. Sharks, Hyunwoo said conversationally, are ambush predators. For the first time since the trial began, Luna opened her massive jaws. The energy fields around her enhanced teeth began to glow with a soft blue light. The water around her mouth started to move in strange patterns as powerful forces gathered. The apex devourer looked up just in time to see 80 feet of prehistoric death coming down. Toward it like a falling mountain, the creature tried to dodge, but it was too late. It had been designed for land combat, for fighting enemies that moved in predictable ways. It had no experience with three-dimensional warfare. Luna's jaws closed around the apex devourer's neck with the sound of thunder. The sound of Luna's jaws closing around the apex devourer echoed through the arena like a thunderclap. But what happened next surprised everyone, including the aliens who thought they understood how predators worked. Luna did not bite down. Her massive teeth, each one enhanced with energy fields that could cut through starship hulls, rested gently against the six-armed creature's armored neck. The apex devourer struggled for a moment, its claws scratching uselessly against Luna's sides. But then it went very still. Every creature in the arena could see what was happening. Luna could have ended the fight in an instant. Her jaws were powerful enough to bite through almost anything in the known galaxy, but instead she was holding her opponent carefully, like a house cat carrying a kitten. "Why does she not finish it?" asked the Thurvax representative in the diplomatic section. His voice was confused and worried. Ambassador Heiwan did not answer immediately. She was watching Hyunwoo, who had moved closer to where Luna floated with her captive. The human's face showed no excitement or bloodlust. Instead, he looked calm and perhaps a little sad. "Because," Heiwan finally replied, "Luna is not a mindless killer. None of our predators are." Down in the arena, Krikstal was staring at his defeated champion in shock. The apex devourer, bred for 10,000 years to be the ultimate warrior, was completely helpless in Luna's gentle grip. Worse, the creature had stopped struggling entirely. Its six arms hung limp in the water, and its glowing red eyes had dimmed to a dull orange. "Impossible," the Velthari champion whispered. "The apex devourer knows no fear. It cannot be dominated." "She is not dominating it," Hyunwoo explained quietly. He reached out to touch Luna's side, and the massive shark responded by moving slightly closer to him. "She is teaching it." "Teaching it what?" "That there are bigger predators in the ocean." The truth of those words was written in every line of the apex devourer's body. The creature had been designed to be at the top of every food chain, to never meet anything that could threaten it. But Luna was something from before the concept of food chains had even existed. She was apex predator from a time when Earth's oceans were the only hunting ground that mattered, and she was not alone. As if responding to some signal that only she could hear, Luna began to make a sound. It was not quite a roar and not quite a song, but something in between. The noise traveled through the water and the metal of the arena itself, vibrating in frequencies that touched something deep in every creature's brain. "What is she doing?" Sujin asked, pressing her hands against the viewing barrier. Tae-min was checking his devices again, his face growing pale. "She is calling," he said quietly. "Calling what?" Before he could answer, the arena's emergency systems activated again. Warning lights flashed as new seismic readings appeared on the monitoring equipment. But this time, the disturbance was not coming from just one direction. It was coming from everywhere. The other gates around the arena began to open, not the massive main gate that Luna had entered through, but smaller passages that led to holding areas and preparation chambers. From each opening came more water, more of the glowing gravitic fluid that allowed Earth's ocean predators to swim through three-dimensional space. And with the water came more sharks. They were smaller than Luna, but not by much. Great whites and tigers and bulls, all of them enhanced with the same cybernetic systems that had brought their extinct cousin back to life. Their eyes glowed with the soft light of neural interfaces. Their movements were coordinated in ways that spoke of shared intelligence. "A pack," breathed the head judge, his crystal body flickering rapidly. "They hunt in packs." "Pod," Hyunwoo corrected gently. "Sharks do not usually group together, but these ones have learned to work as a team. We call it a pod." The dozen sharks took positions around the arena with military precision. They did not threaten the viewing areas or make any aggressive moves toward the alien spectators. Instead, they simply waited, floating in the glowing water like living weapons held in reserve. Luna was still holding the apex devourer gently in her jaws, but now her captive was surrounded by predators that could have come from its worst nightmares. The six-armed creature made a small sound that might have been a whimper. "This is not fair," Krikstal protested, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "The rules said one creature per champion." "You are right," Hyunwoo agreed. "Luna, please ask the others to wait outside." The massive shark made another sound, different from her earlier call. Immediately, the other sharks began to swim back toward the gates they had come from. They moved without argument or hesitation, like soldiers following orders from a respected commander. Within moments, Luna and the apex devourer were alone in the arena again. "How?" Krixtal demanded. "How do you control so many predators?" "I do not control them," Hyunwoo said, and for the first time his voice carried a hint of emotion. "That is the difference between us. You bred slaves. We made friends." To demonstrate his point, he moved closer to Luna's massive head. The shark's ancient eyes tracked his movement, and something that might have been affection showed in their depths. When Hyunwoo placed his hand against her snout, she made that purring rumble again. "Luna and I have worked together for 6 years," he explained. "I was part of the team that helped design her neural enhancements. I was there when she first opened her eyes in the resurrection tank. I taught her to swim in the enhanced water. She taught me to see the ocean the way a shark does." The connection between human and shark was obvious to everyone watching. This was not a master commanding a beast. This was a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine care. "But why?" asked the head judge. "Why bring back extinct predators? Why enhance them?" Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, his hand still resting on Luna's snout. "Because someone had to speak for them," he said finally. "Sharks ruled Earth's oceans for hundreds of millions of years. They were perfect hunters, perfect survivors. But humans came along and nearly wiped them out in just a few centuries." He looked up at the viewing areas, meeting the eyes of aliens from a dozen different species. "We brought them back because we owed them that much. And we enhanced them because the galaxy is a dangerous place. They needed to be ready for new challenges." Luna's jaws were still closed gently around the apex devourer's neck, but the six-armed creature was no longer struggling. Instead, it seemed to be listening to something. Its breathing had slowed, and its eyes had stopped glowing with artificial rage. "What is happening to it?" Krixtal asked, and for the first time he sounded worried about his creature rather than angry at his opponent. "Luna is not hurting it," Hyunwoo explained. "Sharks have electromagnetic senses that can detect the electrical activity in other creatures' nervous systems. She can feel its fear, its confusion, its pain. She is trying to calm it down." As if to prove his words, the apex devourer's tense muscles began to relax. The creature's 6 arms stopped their frantic waving and settled quietly in the water. Its tail, which had been lashing back and forth, went still. "The apex devourer was bred to be aggressive," Hyunwoo continued. "But underneath all that genetic programming, it is still a living creature. It can still feel fear and pain and loneliness. Luna is showing it that it does not have to be afraid." The massive shark made another gentle sound, and the apex devourer responded with a quieter noise of its own. For a moment, predator and prey seemed to be having a conversation in a language older than words. Then, very carefully, Luna opened her jaws and released her captive. The apex devourer floated free in the water, completely unharmed. A few scratches from Luna's teeth marked its armored hide, but they were superficial. The creature could have swum away, could have resumed the fight, could have tried to attack its captor. Instead, it moved closer to Luna and gently touched her side with one of its clawed hands. "Impossible," whispered the Veltari ambassador in the diplomatic section. But Ambassador Haiwan was smiling. "No," she said quietly. "Just unexpected." Down in the arena, Hyunwoo reached out to touch the apex devourer's head. The creature did not pull away. Its eyes, no longer glowing with artificial rage, looked almost peaceful. "Good girl, Luna," Hyunwoo said softly. "You did very well." The massive shark's response was a sound of pure contentment. She had done exactly what she was supposed to do. Not kill an enemy, but make a friend. The arena was completely silent as everyone watched the impossible scene below. The apex devourer, bred for 10,000 years to be the ultimate killing machine, was floating peacefully beside Luna like they were old friends. The 6-armed creature's claws were gently stroking the shark's side, and Luna was making soft rumbling sounds that vibrated through the water. Krixtal stood frozen in shock, his yellow eyes wide and unblinking. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. Everything he had believed about strength and dominance was crumbling before his eyes. In the viewing areas, the alien spectators were equally stunned. The Thurvax had stopped their constant chattering. The Zephyrian's fur was still standing on end, but now it seemed to be from awe rather than fear. Even the crystal Nexari judges were pulsing with colors that spoke of deep confusion. "The trial is over," announced the head judge, though his voice sounded uncertain. The human's creature has achieved dominance without causing death. More than that, said another Nexari judge, it has created alliance where there should be enmity. Ambassador HFY stood up in the diplomatic section, her movements drawing attention from every alien present. She had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Honored representatives, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's amplification systems. What you have witnessed today is not unusual for humans. This is how we interact with the predators of our world. She gestured toward the arena floor, where Hyunwoo was now petting both Luna and the apex devourer with equal gentleness. We do not dominate through force. We do not break spirits to create obedience. We form partnerships based on mutual respect and understanding. The Velthari ambassador was shaking his head in disbelief. But the apex devourer was perfect. It was designed to be unbeatable. It is perfect, HFY agreed. But perfect at what? Killing, destroying, or surviving and adapting? She smiled slightly. Your creature has just learned that there are other ways to be strong. Down in the arena, Krixtal finally found his voice. How? He asked Hyunwoo, and the single word carried all his confusion and wonder. The human looked up from where he was examining a small scratch on the apex devourer's arm. How what? How did your beast defeat mine without fighting? How did it turn a warrior into... He gestured helplessly at his creature, who was now playfully nudging Luna's fins with its snout. Luna did not turn your creature into anything. Hyunwoo explained patiently. She just showed it what it already was underneath all the genetic programming. What do you mean? Hyunwoo moved through the water to stand beside both creatures. Luna immediately swam closer, her massive bulk moving with surprising grace. The apex devourer followed, staying close to its new friend. Your people spent 10,000 years breeding aggression into this creature, Hyunwoo said, but they could not breed out the deeper instincts. The ones that say survival is more important than fighting, the ones that recognize when it is time to submit to a superior predator. He reached out to touch the apex devourer's head again, and the creature leaned into his hand like a cat seeking affection. Luna did not defeat your champion through violence. She defeated it through understanding. She showed it that it did not have to be alone anymore. Krixtal's tail was no longer lashing with anger. Instead, it was moving slowly back and forth in what might have been thought. Alone, he repeated quietly. Yes, Hyunwoo said, and his voice was gentle. Your creature has been alone its entire life, has it not? Bred in isolation, trained to fight everything it meets, never allowed to form bonds with others. The Velthari champion's scales seemed to lose some of their luster. That is how warriors are made. Bonds make creatures weak, do they? Hyunwoo asked. He gestured to Luna, who was now swimming lazy circles around both him and the apex devourer. Luna has bonds with me, with her pod, with the other creatures in our research facility. Does she seem weak to you? Before Krixtal could answer, the head judge spoke again. The trial by combat has concluded. According to our laws, the human champion has achieved victory. The crystal being paused, its body flickering with uncertain light. However, this outcome raises questions about the nature of strength itself. What kind of questions? Asked the Thurvax representative. The Velthari claimed that humans needed to learn respect, the judge explained. But what we have witnessed suggests that humans understand respect in ways we had not considered. Ambassador HFY stepped forward. With your permission, honored judges, I would like to address the assembly. The Nexari conferred among themselves for a moment, their crystal bodies pulsing in synchronization. Finally, the head judge nodded. You may speak. HFY's voice carried to every corner of the arena as she began. For too long, the species of this galaxy have defined strength through domination. The ability to force others to submit, to break their will, to make them serve through fear. She gestured toward the arena floor, where an impossible scene of cooperation was still unfolding. Humans have learned a different way. We have learned that true strength comes from building bonds, not breaking them, from understanding, not intimidating. The apex devourer was now swimming alongside Luna, copying her movements with the eagerness of a student learning from a master. Hyunwoo floated between them, occasionally reaching out to touch one or the other in encouragement. Your creature is not weak now. HFY continued, addressing Krixtal directly. It is stronger than it has ever been, because now it has allies instead of just weapons. The Velthari champion looked down at his creature, seeing it with new eyes. The apex devourer's movements were no longer stiff and programmed. They flowed with a grace that spoke of happiness, of freedom from the constant aggression that had been burned into its genes. But if we do not dominate, Krixtal said slowly, how do we maintain order? How do we show strength to our enemies? The same way Luna did, Hyunwoo replied, by being so clearly superior that fighting becomes unnecessary. He moved to the center of the arena, both creatures following him like devoted pets. Luna could have killed your champion in the first few seconds of the fight. Her jaws are strong enough, her teeth sharp enough, her speed fast enough, but she chose not to, because killing was not the goal. What was the goal? Asked the head judge. Understanding, Hyunwoo said simply. Luna wanted to know what kind of creature she was facing. She wanted to see if it could be reasoned with, communicated with, befriended. Only if those options failed would she have resorted to violence. The implications of his words were spreading through the crowd like ripples in a pond. Representatives from dozens of species were talking quietly among themselves, reassessing everything they thought they knew about power and strength. Sujin was staring down at Hyunwoo with something approaching awe. I have worked with him for 2 years, she whispered to Taiman. How did I not know about any of this? The commander was reading more files on his device, his expression growing more amazed with each line. According to this, the Deep Ocean Research Division has brought back over 50 extinct species from Earth. All of them enhanced, all of them trained to work with humans as partners. 50 species? Sujin's voice cracked. What else do we have? Taemin scrolled through the list, his eyes widening. Megalodons, obviously, but also Dunkleosteus, Leviathan melville, Carcharocles angustidon. He paused. There is something here called Project Kraken that is still classified. Down in the arena, the trial was officially ending, but something new was beginning. Krixtal had climbed down from the viewing platform and was wading into the enhanced water. His movements were hesitant, uncertain, but determined. May I? He began, then stopped. May I touch my creature? Hyunwoo smiled. It is your creature. You do not need my permission. But I have never... Krixtal's voice was barely above a whisper. We were taught that touching makes warriors soft. Try it, Hyunwoo encouraged. See what happens. Very carefully, Krixtal reached out and placed one clawed hand on the apex devourer's side. The creature immediately turned toward him, its 6 arms moving in what might have been excitement. For the first time in its life, it was being touched with gentleness instead of clinical efficiency. The sound the apex devourer made was unlike anything it had ever produced before. It was soft and rumbling, almost like Luna's contented purr. The creature moved closer to its creator, nuzzling against him with obvious affection. Tears began to form in Krixtal's yellow eyes. I did not know, he whispered. I did not know it could feel like this. Most creatures can, Hyunwoo said gently. They just need someone to show them how. The head judge's voice echoed through the arena one final time. The trial by combat is concluded. The human delegation has proven their point through means we had not anticipated. The crystal being paused, considering his next words carefully. Perhaps it is time for all of us to reconsider what strength truly means. As the crowd began to disperse, talking excitedly among themselves, Krixtal looked up at Hyunwoo with something like gratitude. Will you teach me? He asked. Will you show me how to be a friend to my creature instead of just its master? Hyunwoo reached out and placed a hand on the Velthari's shoulder. It would be my honor. Luna circled around all of them one more time, her ancient eyes bright with satisfaction.